Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Instead of unsharing, I unstreamed. Uh, we should be good now, theoretically. And I've killed all of my extra garbage here. So let's try this again. Haha! It's working, theoretically. Cool. All right, so we're going to start with issue number 2941. Which we'll pull that up. Pretty straightforward issue. Should make sense to anybody who looks at it. So I'm not sure. Yeah, let's see about this. This is definitely something we're going to want to fix. It's going to be specific to the habitat site. I think that this is probably a chore. It should be relatively easy to fix. It's just got to be a middleman setting or the like. Maybe some Ruby bits in there, maybe not. That should be straightforward enough. And we'll put that in accepted minor because this is something that, unless you would like to fix, is something that we probably need to fix. All right, look at that. Done with the first one. So let's move on to 2939. I'll give everybody a moment to read this. Yep. Pretty straightforward. Basically, however we're parsing the ring keys right now, we don't recognize symlinks as being valid for the actual file type. It needs to be a literal file. So it's not a bug that I've seen before, but I would assume it's something that we are going to need to fix, because I would assume that this is not expected behavior. And that's going to be supervisor stuff. I would also assume probably not a major change. I'll mark it as easy for now, and we'll when we dive in to look to see what it actually is involved, that may need to get adjusted. But for now, I think that's probably a relatively easy fix. And we're going to put that in accepted minor. And we'll move on to 2938, which I'm assuming is probably going to have the same problem. It's definitely also going to be a bug. I hesitate to mark both of these easy, but without doing a little more discovery work, that's what we'll mark them as right now. This is going to be accepted minor as well. Anything that with regards to the way that we handle encryption inside of the rings and user encryption and all of that is going to be stuff that we're going to want to definitely prioritize getting fixed. 2927, an issue from Mr. Elliott, who is not on the call. I'll give everybody a minute to read through this as well. Elliot also put a link to our where this exists in the event server protocols. And I don't necessarily disagree with this, but I also haven't touched the event server code almost at all. I know where that config object is, or whatever you call that in Rustland. I know where that, let's see, here we are. I'm going to go ahead and accept it, and then I'm going to assign it to you, Elliot, if you're watching, now that you're going to be spending more time on the team. If I can remember how to spell Elliot's name. There we go. And we're going to put that also in accepted minor. Let's go ahead and refresh, get those cleaned up. Oh, that's what's going on. 1 second here. This is what we actually want. All right, and we're going to move on to 2914, which is a documentation fix. Yeah, I think that is probably. I think that we need some clarification around the hab package run. I think that's actually more what's being asked about here inside the studio. So that's when you start any of the supervisor services. But when we're talking about packages that are binaries, you're actually going to run the hab package exec, which so I think that probably this is valid. What we need to do is clear up, have a more clear explanation of when you're executing binary only packages, how you call those. And I think we have actually some documentation on that, but it may not be clear enough. So I'm going to go ahead and update this real quick. Unmute myself. I like to mute myself when I'm typing because I have a super loud mechanical keyboard. So this is going to be a chore for some documentation around that. It's going to be relatively easy. And this is going to be just a content change. I'm also going to assign this to David Reedy here. And we're going to put this in accepted minor, leave our comment, and we can go back and move along from there. All right, 2884. Yep, that is a good catch, Josh. pretty straightforward. I don't know effort level, but I'm certain that there will be some rust involved in that. And I would assume that this actually can go into the core engineering board. And with the accepted minor milestone. Oops. Let's go back. 2870. And this is a fun one that Mandy opened, I guess, 11 days ago. We were talking about this in general. Some of you may have seen this conversation, but it's a pretty bizarre issue. Effectively, her workstation ran out of inodes. So I'll give everybody a second to read this one. This is definitely a bug that we're going to have to fix, assuming that we can figure out what actually causes it. And I would guess that maybe Fletcher might have an idea on this one. That being said, we do have a workaround right now for this, which is if you are on Linux, you're no longer obligated to use the chroot environment. So if this is something that you are seeing, any information you can add to the ticket would be great. If you can't add information or you don't have time or what have you, you can absolutely go the path of passing in the -D flag for any of your studio calls, which will default back to using a Docker container rather than a chroot. Ah, indeed. So it looked like because of having multiple studios lingering around on the system, uh, when Mandy RM'd one of those studios, it cleared up a bunch of the inodes. So I'm not, yeah, so definitely a bug, something weird we're going to have to figure out. Definitely something that the team will end up needing to do. I'm going to mark that as less easy just because I think there will probably be some discovery work in the spike around that. There's going to be some rust and possibly some shell code. We'll go ahead and put that in accepted minor for now as well. And move on to 2865. Yep. And this is with regards to some of the chores that we're doing around our searchability on the website. So some of you may have been following some of these issues that have come up that are specifically come out of this need to have some better search. We made a switch in the engine that we're using for search across the site. And there's some work that's going to be involved in tuning that and refactoring it to make it better. So this is good for now. I don't know that there's actually any code involved in this. I would assume that this is also going to be kind of relatively easy, just kind of thing that somebody needs to take the time to do. So we're going to go ahead and put that into accepted minor as well, because I don't think anybody externally can actually do any of that. 2790. Give everybody a moment. Some front end stuff here. Sounds like some good changes to me. Oh, actually, this is already in. This might be actually already closed out. I've seen this happen recently with the GitHub projects. I'm not really sure what's causing it, where we have things that get moved and then they get dumped out. So We'll leave that for now because I think that's actually just going to get closed out. Um, might be wrong, but this one as well. Go ahead. Good. Same thing here. We've got a few things that are getting boogered up somehow. Well, we'll figure that out at some point. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move back to. I think this has also been triaged. Oh no, this is a Chris Nunciato. So this was triage a couple of times, but we asked for an update, and apparently we've done a bad job of getting an update from Chris. So I will actually ping him right now. So that I am following up the way that I'm supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and send him the link. He can take a look at that, and we'll actually move on past that for now, which is going to be down to 2658. This was originally closed out. I think that we actually ended up reopening it. And I think that this is something that probably needs to get some attention from core maintainers and community members. There's quite a lot of back scroll in this issue. And what it boils down to is kind of the way that Habitat handles its dependencies right now. In that we don't allow users to have transitive dependencies that are kind of inherently injected, specifically when it comes to things like package config. So if you want to read through that, there's a lot there. It's worth looking at. I think, if I recall, we are waiting on an update on some more information from the community member who opened the issue. So we can come back to that. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flag this as an RFC because I think a change like this would end up being kind of sweeping. And I don't know if we know how we could actually do this without affecting the purity of our habitat packages and the auditability of habitat packages. So there may be just some discussion that needs to happen around that as well. And we'll go ahead. And this is kind of a wide sweeping thing. If I recall, this is going to be specifically with regards to how we do plan builds. And as such, it may have an effect on other things, but that's going to be the primary area that this touches. And for now, we're going to leave that untriaged. We'll get an RFC attached to this. Yep. So any of you viewers or any of you community members who are coming back and watching this video at a later time, please give this a look and add in your thoughts and feelings on the subject after giving the back scroll a quick read through. Moving on to 2631. Oh, yep. So we just had, this is part of the work of, that's what's going on here. I totally forgot that Jamie did this. He actually went through our backlog and popped some things out, put some things in, and cleaned that work up. So I think that this is something that we need to get to. I would assume that it's probably low on the priority list right now. So the milestone I'm going to put this in right now is help wanted. This is just a minor optimization. It would be a pretty easy bit of work if anybody were to want to do it. Chances are we will eventually end up doing this as the need arises. But for now, we'll kind of we'll leave that there. It's just going to be a little bit of some JavaScript, which is already on there. Yep, great, good to go. Uh, Here we go. And we're going to move on to 2550. Uh, Fletcher, the title speaks for itself. I think that this is definitely reasonable. I also think that this issue should get reopened over on the other board, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one out for now. We're going to move on to 2548. This is one that we've had lots of discussion in Triage about. What we're doing right now with our RFCs is we're keeping these open. We're not dumping them into a milestone, just because with an RFC, we're not, until we get an appropriate level of interaction, we don't want to necessarily accept something or mark it as denied, what have you. So this package split RFC is probably a wide-reaching change. Would definitely be worth looking through if you haven't looked through it yet and giving your comments and thoughts on it. By and large, effectively, what the issue is a discussion of how to minimize builds for things that are going to output more than one type of artifact. So when we're talking about like Postgres, if you build Postgres, we don't necessarily want to build Postgres and then build Postgres again and throw away a bunch of the stuff only to get the Postgres libs, which you would use if you're making a connection to the like a client to the database as opposed to having the full database running. Same thing goes for like our docs if we want to be able to output an artifact that's just docs. So right now, the way that we do this is we can source the plan, which gives us a little bit of brevity in kind of plans that are I guess, lower in the hierarchy. Like, for example, if we wanted to build Postgres, we can just source it. All of its logic gets pulled in here, but we can change a couple of values. Like if we want Postgres just build version 95 for a version 95 package, we can specify that one change, and it should still build. Now, what actually ends up happening is we're still going to build these packages multiple times, so it's not actually a split per se. It just allows you some nice syntactic sugar around not having to rewrite a plan multiple times to get this kind of uh, this behavior that we're looking for. So yeah, fill in your thoughts there. We haven't had enough, I think, discussion on that yet to really have a strong feeling one way or the other. I have had verbal conversations with community members, but for tracking's sake, if you care about that kind of thing, please update some thoughts on that issue. And what we're going to do next is 2516. For anybody that knows the builder code base, this should be pretty straightforward, right? Um, the scheduler service is what we use to schedule builds of packages. Um, yep. And I think that this is a good feature, but probably low priority for now. I go ahead and flag this accepted minor. Seems like a good feature to me. Definitely going to be some Rust. You're definitely going to want to know that the code base there. I don't know effort level, so I'm going to flag it with less easy for now. We can come back and validate what that actually is later on. $23.57 is the next issue, and I'll give everybody a moment to read it. All right, that should be straightforward. I think that this is also a good feature and a good change. I don't know if it's something that needs to be prioritized right now as far as what we've got in our immediate requirements. So what I'm going to do is add it to accepted minor and also flag it with some Rust. Seems like it could be a relatively reasonable change. And we'll move along. 2224 is next. If you know anything about Zookeeper, this will probably make sense to you. I'll give everybody a moment to read the back scroll here because it might take you a moment. Yep. So I think we talked about this in triage a couple of weeks ago, and then it didn't ever actually get triaged. So for now, I think that this is probably something that we can support and should support. I'm guessing this is going to be, yeah, it's already flagged, supervisor related. And I think for now, this might be a little bit more of a complex change. And so we'll put this in. I don't imagine that this is something that we might get out of community PRs, but I do think it's something that we should put in help wanted for now, as if somebody were to solve this problem, we'd definitely accept it, but I don't see this getting prioritized on the immediate. So we'll come back to that. Again, anybody who's watching, our help wanted milestone that we use is just a bucket. We revisit those issues every month and move those things around. We do the same thing with our accepted minor to see what's going to get put onto the backlog. It's sort of our holding area until we know exactly what we're going to prioritize. So, all right. 2224 was the last one. So 2200 is the next one. Yep. I think that this is great and is something we'll get to eventually. It's going to be a little bit of HTML. It's going to be an easy change, just as somebody has the time to do it. $21.94. Actually, oh, this is the builder tutorial bits. Yep, this is something we're going to do at a certain point. I think that we had conversations about this even as recently as this week. For now, we'll put it in accepted minor because it is something we're going to want to do. And it's going to be something that the core team is going to have to do. Definitely also going to be time consuming, not hard necessarily, but there will be some work involved in that. Now this, I believe, is perhaps complete. Yes. Yep, this is closed. Not sure why it didn't get closed. I'm going to go ahead and close it out. Haha, that is a cool feature idea, actually. Tasha added. You can put this in help wanted, and we'll reprioritize a certain point. But for now, it's a cool idea. Just a little delighter. All right, 2163. Give everybody a second here. Yep, I think that this is a reasonable request. So effectively, the for anybody that doesn't understand what's being asked here, inside our Habitat paths, when you install a Habitat package and run a Habitat service, you end up with a bunch of utility directories that are kind of the expected locations for us to put various bits of things for the service that you're running. All of those exist under Hab service package name, Hab service, and then the name of your package, right? And inside of there, one of those is the data path. And so if you look at the docs page, there's going to be a package service data path variable that refers to this, which effectively is just saying for whatever running service we're talking about, the slash data directory is sort of what's in question here. And that directory was sort of created so that if you're wanting to do things like stateful services, which you should very easily be able to do with Habitat, you can do things like mount using mounts to mount file systems into that path, etc. But there are some corner cases where users are going to really need to be able to make that variable configurable. And I think that like right now you could change the value of that, but it's going to have some unexpected side effects. So I think for now we should probably update this to this is a feature request. There's going to be some Rust involved. There might be some shell involved. And it's going to be supervisor specifically. And we're going to put that under accepted minor and move along. I'm going to remove this. Actually, I'm going to leave the needs discussion. So anybody who has some thoughts on this, the implementation of this, it would be great to get some input. 2163. Next is going to be 2137. Yep. So this is going to be a documentation request. Yep. David's already assigned himself to this, which is fine. We'll go ahead and put this in accepted minor as well. Just going to be content. $21.22 is the next. Ooh, indeed. That's gnarly. Look at that. Yep. This is going to be a help wanted thing for now. We will revisit, of course. Like I've said before, this is going to be I'm wondering some of this stuff may end up being supervisor related and some of it may be CLI related because of the errors. Um, that's okay. We'll flag it for supervisor right now. It's a bug. I have no idea because my Windows skills are pretty weak. I have no idea how much work is going to be involved in that. I'm going to flag it for less easy for now. There will definitely be Rust involved in that, and this only affects Windows currently. So should be good. And anybody who's interested in tackling that, that might be a good thing if you're a Windows user who wants to get into the code base. This is probably something that Matt might be able to help with. And if not Matt, the other core team members might be able to help with. It might be a good thing to do a little bit of mentoring on. So I'm going to flag it with mentored as well. Great. 2011. Yes. No brainer. This is something that we've got in the works right now. There is now a scaffolding channel in Slack. Myself and Nell are in there. We're going to be hacking over the next few weeks to kind of get some of these things in place. This is a totally reasonable request and is something that we're going to, as the core team, is going to want to do. Happy to have input from community members on this as well. But it is something that we think is an important feature to Habitat and important to the workflow. So I'm going to put it in accepted minor. This is going to be some shell code, like a bunch of shell code. So that should be fun. And I don't know, it's not hard per se, but it is going to be time consuming, some time consuming work there. So great. 1973. All right, I'll give everybody a second to read this blob of text. Yep. So this is going to be for those of you who haven't spent any time in the code base. Um, I do think that probably none of this will make sense to you. But if you go in and look in the soup component in the code base, you'll notice that we've got a manager directory in there with some different Rust code. That's mostly what Jamie's talking about here. This is something we're going to have to do. I think if this is the issue I'm thinking it is, yeah, the synchronous flag. That was what I expected. This is likely to be more refactoring than anything else. Um, I'm going to put it in as a chore for now. It is kind of also a feature, uh, or at least enables us in some other features. But right now, that's just going to be a chore. It's a refactor. It's not going to be too crazy, but it will require some understanding of the way that we're handling all of those bits internally. So it's also something that's probably you're gonna want to pair with a core maintainer on. And it's going to be a lot of Rust. Could be a fun one to try to solve, actually. And for now, I'm also going to dump this into Help Wanted. This could get reprioritized in short order, but for now, we'll put it in Help Wanted. 1952. This is an interesting issue. We've had a couple of conversations about this, and we ended up kind of pushing back on the adding extensions to things. And there was another RFC that went up that kind of got shot down. This needs some discussion. I think that Matt is right, but I think that we may need to discuss implementation details to have a better idea of how to handle this right now. Um, so I hesitate to put this in accepted minor for now. I'm going to edit this and add RFC to the flag to the title here, and add the RFC flag because I think that we need some people to talk through this. There's going to be some Rust code involved in that. Um, yeah, and definitely an interesting idea, but something that we're going to want to talk about either as a team or as a community. Uh, this is an old one that I opened. I think that this is sort of in line with the other issue that we looked at earlier from Mandy. And this is something that actually Fletcher and I have been talking about recently as well, which is that we would really like the behavior for the studio to be the same no matter what platform you're on, to have some consistency in the platforms. And right now, the issue, it's not necessarily an issue, but Linux users have a different experience than Windows and Mac users unless those Linux users are now using our new Docker flag. Obviously, the reason being that Docker is used on Windows and Mac. We now also have a flag on Windows that lets Windows users do the native Windows thing, which is create a Windows container with the -W flag. So we want some more uniformity in this, but I think ideally we either want to go the path of having Docker users have the same experience as the Linux chroot environment, where those things hang around until you clean them up, or we need to change the chroot behavior to be that it gets removed and cleaned up on exit unless you pass in the flag to make it persistent. Either way, I think this issue is probably going to get closed. And I'll actually go back and add this in as a link to Mandy's issue, or look to see if we have another triaged one that we can kind of look through that points to the more root cause. Right now, I think this is pretty much can be closed out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to leave myself a comment here so I remember why. Oh. My dog is very angry. No, stop. And she's still barking in the background. But for now, it's probably a good time as any to wrap it up for the week. We got through, I think, a bunch of the issues that were left. There shouldn't be a ton. All of these have been touched at least. So that's very good. I think what we'll end up doing is I'm going to go back through a couple of these and resort them because I think there are things that got removed from the backlog intentionally. And I will. Other than that, we're all caught up. So next week, trying to think. I believe I will be around on Tuesday. And what we may want to do is go through some of the issues on core plans, as well as checking through maybe some of the open PRs on core plans. So for now, we're going to call it quits. Thanks to everybody who could come and listen to me drone on by myself this week, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks.